Election Sunday is over, the regions are broken up, and let me guess, you've already broken about 5 pencils. Well, all you March Madness fanatics, don't worry, we've got you covered. Stay tuned for a special edition of Coastline News March Madness. Welcome to a Coastline News Special where we will attempt to answer all your bracketing questions. I'm host Amanda McCord. Alongside me, Carter Warnock, PLNU basketball player, and Jacob Roth, sports editor of The Point Weekly. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good to be here. Favorite time of the year. Can't wait for some March Madness.
It's exciting. Ready for some upsets.
All right. Well, let's get right to it, shall we? Let's get out your brackets, get out your erasers and your whiteout too, because let's be real, no one knows what they're talking about this year. We'll start with the Midwest region with #1 overall ranked Louisville. Carter, talk to me a little bit about Louisville and how they feel about their region.
Well, Louisville is coming off a Big East championship after a hard-nosed battle against Syracuse. Syracuse gave them a run for their money, but Louisville, being the #1 team in this tournament, they overpowered it and they overcame with the victory. However, they'll be screwed because they have a #2 Duke team and a #3 seed Michigan State, who they could potentially meet to go to the Final Four. But with that Big East championship, the Louisville, they had 10 in a row, and they capped off with the Big East championship. So look for Louisville to really make their statement and look for a championship run.
And you mentioned those Big Three. Jacob, if I'm not wrong, you have some more about those Big Three. Not only are the teams the top seeded teams, but you have the coaches as the top 3. The 1, 2, and 3 seed coaches have, I think, 22 Final Four appearances between the 3 of them, along with 6 national championships. So what are you thinking if you're a coach going into this bracket?
Yeah, I mean, if you're one of those coaches, you know that you're facing a bunch of legends. You've got Coach Krzyzewski from Duke, who's won national championships this decade. Rick Pitino of Louisville always does well. And, of course, Tom Izzo, who always works his magic in March, which is with his Michigan State Spartans. This is being called the group of death, and rightly so, because so many of the quality teams are in this bracket. Now look out for, besides the top 3 seeds, #4 seed St. Louis is also dangerous. They're a mid-major darling, and a lot of people are taking them more seriously than normal. And they're playing with heavy hearts because former coach Rick Majerus passed away back in December. So like I said, every team in this bracket is tough, so look for a lot of hard-fought competition. This is definitely the group of death.
All right, well, group of death, that's a positive note to send you on a commercial break with. So don't go away. We're going to go west to take a look at the #1 seeded Zags and the Mountain West Conference champion Lobos coming up next. Where's that? Gonzaga's taken some serious heat this season. They start out having a Cinderella season, a historic season for their program. First time getting a #1 ranking, but the last couple of weeks, the Bulldogs seem to be fast approaching that midnight hour. Still, a #1 seed is nothing to sneeze at, but a lot of people are saying this is the easiest, not easy by any means, but the easiest road to Atlanta. Jacob, tell me why this region is less intimidating than the others.
Well, as the #1 seed, Gonzaga, being a mid-major program, a lot of people aren't really taking them very seriously because they don't think they face quality opponents throughout their conference season. Now, they absolutely steamrolled the Mountain West Conference, even blowing out the #2 team in that conference, St. Mary's, in the conference championship game. But if you look closely, there are some definitely tough teams in this region. We've got Ohio State, which we'll talk about in a minute, but the Buckeyes just won the Big Ten tournament championship. Wisconsin at the 5 seed, probably the best #5 seed in the entire tournament. And if everywhere you look, you've got Arizona, that played strong in the Pac-West, or the Pac-12, excuse me. So, I mean, it might look easy on the outside, but this is as tough a bracket as any, I think.
All right, so let's go a little bit deeper. Let's look at that Ohio State team. Carter, you have Ohio State going to the Final Four, beating out Gonzaga and everyone else in this region. So what do you think the Buckeyes have that's going to take them all the way?
Yeah, no disrespect to Gonzaga, but when it comes to Ohio State, the Buckeyes claimed a Big Ten title this year, and that's impressive because, well, it's the Big Ten. And if you're up to date with the Big Ten, you'll remember that it is as tough as it really was. You have Indiana, that was #1, that was taken down multiple times at the top seed. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Michigan State are all in the Big Ten. The Buckeyes are opposite of the West region, pitted against Gonzaga, and they have an easier path up to an Elite Eight matchup against Gonzaga. On the other hand, Gonzaga has to go through Pitt, Wisconsin, or Kansas State, all who can put the Zags #1 seed and a monumental season into jeopardy.
Yeah, definitely. The term is easy isn't really thrown around a lot. So the fact that it has been thrown around for this region definitely, gives you cause to think for whatever reason. And just to shake things up in the West a little bit, check out this video of Ole Miss Rebel guard James Henderson. They're playing at Florida, and after nailing a three-pointer against Florida in the SEC championship game last Sunday, he does the Gator Chomp in front of the whole crowd, taunting them. Ole Miss will take on Wisconsin in the round of 64, which, Carter, we talked about. That could very well be the sleeper team out of this region.
No, exactly like you said. Wisconsin beat Indiana, the #1 team preseason, #1 ranked team. They beat them 3 times. Wisconsin, as a #5 seed, I believe, is going to be coming into this tournament, and they're going to make a run for their money too. They're going to show what they have coming off of an impressive Big Ten tournament appearance, and they're going to have a nice little tournament run, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Keep it here. We're going to take a look at the Southern region, including our very own San Diego State, coming up next.
They just really get under my skin.
Fast enough to die.
Puck's your friend if you've nothing to hide.
Why don't you kick anymore?
I'm sorry. I received a phone call that I will never forget.
I want you to look at me when you do it.
License and registration, please.
March Madness special. We are headed south to where our own San Diego State Aztecs, just up the street from our studio, landed a spot in the southern region. They take on Oklahoma on Friday in Philadelphia. Now guys, I think San Diego State has put together parts of a good season. Chase Tapley, Jamal Franklin, they've all had standout games and really excellent moments, but they haven't been able to string anything together for a long period of time. What do you think is going to hold the Aztecs back the most for this tournament?
I think just their inconsistency. I mean, really, they've played some great games. In fact, Jamal Franklin and Chase Tapley have dominated at times this season, but they've stumbled against New Mexico, against Colorado State, against some of the better teams in the Mountain West Conference. I don't know if they have what it takes to put a consistent run, but when they're playing together and they're playing well, they're very dangerous. And I think Coach Steve Fisher, who you remember took Michigan to a national championship way back in the early 90s, is a great coach, so I think he'll have them prepared. But don't overlook the Oklahoma Sooners. They weren't talked about much in the regular season. They played okay in the conference tournament, but bowed out a little early. I still think they're a quality team and a quality conference, so this matchup is really a toss-up to me.
I think this one could go either way.
I definitely agree.
I mean, being on the Portland basketball team, we actually played San Diego State. Unfortunately, it wasn't a very nice game, but we saw what they had and what they potentially had. Jamal Franklin didn't play that game, but we've all witnessed his dominance. So it's going to be an interesting game in that 7-10 matchup. Second round matchup in a couple of days is going to be really fun one to watch, I think.
Yeah, and the coaches actually agree with you. Tim Shelton, one of the assistant coaches at San Diego State, said, quote, "This team has so much potential, but we haven't put it together yet. We just have to play together and harder for 40 minutes. We play hard in stretches." So that's what it's going to come down to for these Aztecs to win against Oklahoma in Philadelphia on Friday. moving on to the number 1 seed, let's talk about the Jayhawks. Carter, tell us a little bit about this matchup.
Yeah, no, the Jayhawks, I think, are probably my second favorite team in this tournament, and also probably the second toughest team behind Louisville. They're going to face an easier Western Kentucky team as a 16 seed, but however, after the first game seed, they have the winner of Villanova and North Carolina. And North Carolina, I think, will move on from that game and maybe even give the Jayhawks a little bit of run for their money. And Jayhawks will actually have to prove their number 1 seed against the Tar Heels in their second game in the matchup. So, but don't look so far for Tar Heels to beat number 1 seed. I don't see it happen anytime soon because I have Kansas in my Final Four.
Yeah, and an interesting storyline with the Kansas and UNC there is that the UNC head coach was actually formerly the Kansas coach. So they've played last year in the 2008, or no, they played last year in the Elite 8. And now if that's a matchup in the 3rd round, that could be quite the blood battle.
It's almost like a tournament rival.
Yeah, and we got a San Diego connection there. Kansas center Jeff Withey is a San Diego native, so look out for some San Diego representing right there in that bracket.
Nice.
Awesome. So don't go away. We saved the East for last. You do not want to miss how Miami just feels kind of like the scorned child of this tournament. We'll bring it back here.
7. Oh, I didn't see you there. I don't know if you heard me, but I just did 8 of those. Getting pumped for the big show tonight. Late Night Loma. You know you love it. Let there be light. Here at Late Night Loma, we take pride in, well, we take pride in ourselves. We're kind of a big deal. Here you go.
Thanks, Caleb.
Not a problem, champ. And I don't know if you've seen our ratings recently, but Late Night Loma is the #1 show of all time. Why is that, you ask? Well, here in the studio, we put in hour upon hour of backbreaking work, just for you. Feel special. We're here to be a blessing.
Has anybody seen my shirt?
And we are.
You're the man, Caleb.
I know. We have some of the best cast and crew that money can buy. Although, admittedly, money is a little scarce, especially after this issue in the 20s that we really just don't like to talk about. No drinks in the studio. This is delectable.
I need something that rhymes with Point Loma.
Melanoma. It just comes naturally. So
Last but certainly not least, let's take a look at the Eastern region. #1 seed Indiana, 3rd time in the program history they've received that coveted #1 seed. Guys, let's talk about Indiana's strong suits for this tournament.
Well, they were the preseason #1, as you know. They brought back a very strong roster from last year. Last year, Cody Zeller, their starting center, was a freshman, and I think they overachieved a lot. They were actually one of the only teams to beat Kentucky last year before the Wildcats went on to steamroll their way to the title. But Indiana's very strong this year. In fact, they boast a couple of All-Americans in Cody Zeller and Victor Oladipo, who should both go pretty high in the NBA draft later this spring. But I think one of their weaknesses is Coach Tom Crean's actually come under a lot of criticism for the way he's been subbing guys in and out. For some of their losses earlier in the season, Oladipo and Zeller have found themselves on the bench even when they're down. So if Tom Crean can pull it together, he is a very good coach. He used to coach at Marquette. He actually coached Dwayne Wade. I don't know if you knew that. But Indiana, I think when they're playing their best basketball, they can beat anyone in the country. At times, they've shown that they're clearly dominant. It's just if they can play that way.
Yeah.
So another team in that bracket who could dominate, should they be able to get everybody moving in the same direction at the same time, Syracuse. In the regular season, they were absolutely killing Louisville, and then they choked it out. So now they have a #4 seed in a bracket with Indiana and Miami. How do you handle that if you're Syracuse?
Syracuse is, like you said, they had a great tournament performance, and I actually have them meeting up with Indiana in the Sweet 16. I have Indiana moving on from that, but Syracuse has definitely earned that right to earn that spot up against Indiana. Syracuse has proven that they've been here before. They know what it takes to win, and they have the coach that will lead them there. They have a lot of strong players, and Syracuse almost beat Louisville. They had the momentum, and then they threw it away in the last 10 minutes or so. But Syracuse definitely has what it takes, and look for them to have a strong tournament performance up until Indiana. And that Indiana 1-4 seed is definitely going to be one to watch, I think, in a couple weeks.
And another team in that bracket that no one has been talking about, or at least this team feels like no one has been talking about them anyway, is Miami. They feel like they've been flying under the radar, that no one's really paid attention to them, and honestly, they're okay with it. They got the 2 seed right now, but they think they have the power to go all the way.
Yeah, exactly. They've played all season long with a chip on their shoulder. Nobody was even talking about them at the beginning of the season. They're known as a football school. But before long, they were undefeated in ACC play for most of the year. They blew out Duke, they blew out North Carolina, and I think by winning the regular season ACC title and then cruising through the ACC tournament, they've proved that they can hang with anyone else in the country. They're loaded with seniors, and I think point guard Shane Larkin might be the best point guard in the country, with apologies to Trey Burke from Michigan. So the Hurricanes, I think, will prove a lot of people wrong. They play best with the chip on their shoulder. So
I agree 100% with that. Like you said earlier, they dismantled Duke earlier on in the season. Dismantled them. They made Duke look stupid. Like Miami is going to be a good team. Come a couple weeks, they're going to make their tournament run, and I have them actually in my final against Louisville. Louisville is my overall championship, but Miami is going to be one of the tournament surprises, I think, and they're going to be a lot of fun to watch in these next couple weeks for sure.
Yeah, and playing with a chip on your shoulder, that always makes things a lot more emotional, a lot more heated. So if the players are already coming out in interviews saying they feel like they've been flown under the radar, that emotion's going to get taken out on the court.
Time to put your money where your mouth is, though.
Exactly. So speaking of putting your money where your mouth is, we're going to take these guys through their brackets. We're going to start with Carter. Every guy is going to do a 30-second wrap-up. We're going to walk you through each of the four regions. So Carter, start us off with the Midwest. Tell us kind of who you're picking and who's your upset.
Yeah, the Midwest is a fun region. We talked about that earlier on in the segment, but that's where you have your number 1 seed Louisville, you have your 2 seed Duke, and you have your 3rd seed Michigan State. Look for Louisville to not cruise their way through, but they're definitely going to have their struggles. But Louisville is my team coming out of the Midwest, and I feel like Louisville is going to have a pretty strong show this year, and they're going to win it all this year, I think. So out of the Midwest, Louisville is my team. It's going to be fun, I think, and I think Oregon is in the Midwest. Are they not?
Yeah, as a 12 seed, they're definitely a sleeper.
Yeah, the 12 seed, the Pac-12 championship Oregon team, and they got a 12. Like, they're going to be mad, and they're going to be a fun team to watch too. And I think that first 12-5 matchup is going to be a fun one to watch against Oklahoma State.
Great. Okay, so Jacob, take us through the South.
The South region, like we talked about, Kansas is maybe the second best team in the country. They eased to the Big 12 title. They blew out their rival Kansas State in the championship game. But this bracket also has a lot of other pretty great teams. You've got Georgetown at the number 2 seed, who at the beginning of the year kind of flew under the radar, but definitely dismantled a lot of Big East teams. They boast an All-American in Otto Porter, who should also go pretty high in the NBA draft this year. And look out for San Diego State, the local team, but also that 8 seed North Carolina. We touched on that a little bit earlier. I think when they play Kansas, that should be one of the best second-round games. A potential upset, but I still think the Jayhawks can hang on. Although I think, unlike most people, I have Georgetown out of this bracket simply because Kansas has been inconsistent at times. And I don't know if I trust freshman Ben McLemore. Not Macklemore. He's not going to the thrift shop. But freshman Ben McLemore has been inconsistent. He's had big games where he scored, I think, over 30 points, set the Jayhawks freshman record. But at the same time, Georgetown's my team coming out of this bracket.
All right. So Georgetown, another almost a sleeper team pick from Jacob. So let's take it to the East. What do you got, Carter?
Yeah, I got, like we just talked about with the East, we have Indiana, we have Miami, and we have the 3rd seed Marquette. Marquette is going to make a run too, but I think their run's going to end up a little short. I think right now you have a lot of dominating teams. You have Indiana as a dominant team, and you have Miami as a dominant team. Miami's going to make their run for it too, and it's going to be Miami, Indiana in that final, in that Elite 8 matchup with, I think Miami's definitely going to be going on to that final. Like I said before, I'm sticking with my word, and Miami's really going to prove it to all the doubters.
All right. And Jacob, let's finish it off with the West.
Well, West has the always disrespected Gonzaga. The Zags have definitely earned their number 1 seed, but many think that because of their cupcake schedule, they'll get bounced early. I do see trouble with them later on in the Elite 8 when they'd have to square up against potentially Wisconsin, who made a great run to the Big Ten championship game. I actually have Wisconsin upsetting the Zags, but I wouldn't be surprised if it went the other way. The team that I think will come out of that bracket, as we've talked about earlier, is the Ohio State Buckeyes, which they got hot right at the end of the year, right at the right time. They went to the Big 12 championship and beat Wisconsin. They've got the best lockdown defender in the country in Aaron Kraft and a great scorer in Deshaun Thomas. Don't sleep on the New Mexico Lobos, though. The Mountain West champions are deadly at home, but they can play with just about anyone. But for my sleeper team in that bracket, I definitely say the Wisconsin Badgers at the 5 seed.
All right. So there you have it. We have broken down the brackets for you and hopefully at least, gotten you to put some of those teams in pen. We will be back right before the Final Four, but before that, If you still need a place to put your bracket, submit your bracket online, go to ESPN.com, search Point Loma Bracket, and then the password is PLNU 2013, and that is going to be the Point Loma Bracket. So in 2 weeks from this Thursday, go ahead and join us right back here, right after Coastline News at 7:30. We're going to take an in-depth look at the Final Four, and so as the field dwindles, your confidence should get higher. Thanks for joining us, and have a happy bracketing.